Hi and g'day, and a big warm hello to our listeners out there. Thank you for joining in on Tech Talk this morning. My name is Steve van Zyl. I'm the National Technical Manager at IOPSA, and today the session or the talk is going to be about the discharge pipe, which seems to always bring a lot of questions about. And today I aim to basically explain a little bit more about the TP discharge pipe. All right, so let's have a look at SANS 10254 2022, which is the latest edition that I have, 4.2. And basically the reference is 5.2, and it speaks boldly about the discharge from valves. So let's have a look at the first section. It says the discharge pipes from expansion control and safety valves shall. Now, before I move on, I just want to say that shall has got quite a definite requirement. It's not an if or maybe. The word shall means that it must and it has to. So A, be of a size. Now, remember, we're speaking about the actual discharge pipe and not the TP, just the discharge pipe. Be not less than the size of the connection to which they are fitted. So let's just look at the picture on the left-hand side. You can see I'm measuring the inside of a TP discharge or a TP valve. And on the opposite side, the outside of the discharge pipe. And all that needs, or that has to be stand out is that it cannot be of a size less. So I can't go and put a 15 mil pipe, a discharge pipe, into a connection that, as you can clearly see, is a 22 mil discharge pipe. So, as I mentioned, you can't use anything smaller. You may not even reduce the discharge pipe at any stage. So if you look at the top right-hand picture, you can see a big green tick. And basically, it's a TP valve, and the discharge pipe size there is a 22 millimeter pipe. The bottom one, as mentioned, is incorrect because it has been reduced, and that's not allowed. All right, considering the fact that the maximum length of the run is 4 meters, so the standard talks about a maximum length of that discharge being 4 meters. And if it does exceed, so you can use 22 mil pipe for a 4 meter distance, a run of 4 meters from the connection of the TP, a distance of 4 meters if you measure it. And if it exceeds 4 meters, there's a special requirement. And that special requirement is that it shall be upsized or increased over the whole length to a maximum of 9 meters. Now, you do see in my presentation that the word whole length is important, and maximum of 9 meters is where that cutoff point is. Okay, well, here's a nice picture to try and illustrate that, or try and get the message across. So right on the top, I have said that the size shall be increased over the whole length of a max of 9 meters. So if you look at the top picture where you see the green tick, can you see that if it's 9 meters, it has to be sized up to the next size. So it'll be a 28 mil, and then that must be over the whole length. So the 4 meters where it was initially connected in 22, you can't use 22. As the standard says, it's got to be upsized to the next size, which is 28. And that is from the TP all the way to the discharge point, but maximum 9 meters. That's very, very important to bear in mind. If you're looking at the bottom, and we do come across this, where we see that plumbers have taken 22 mil pipe, they've got to 4 meters, and then they've put an increaser, and then suddenly increase it to the balance of the 9 meters by 28. That is incorrect, as that doesn't follow the instruction over the whole length of 9 meters. So if you look at the next slide, you're probably asking yourself, well, if the TP connection is a 22 mil size and I've got a 28, well, it's just not possible. How do I connect that? And I hope through this photo that I've taken, it's not the clearest, and I do apologize, but if you look at the far left hand, you'll see there's an arrow. And what is really good practice is that you use the shortest piece, possibly like 100 mil, probably be acceptable, but it's just good practice to first connect it, because you need to connect to the TP fitting, and then immediately upsize. And you see where the circle is, so there's an increaser that we've used there. And we've now obviously gone to the next size, which is a 28 mil. And every elbow that, and we'll have a look at elbows and number of elbows as well. But what's important to note is, as soon as you've upsized it as close as possible to that TP connection of that 100 mil, as I mentioned, it's good practice. Make sure that everything after that is of the size 28 mil fitting, which obviously the red arrow is trying to show that fittings must all be of the biggest size. It's very, very important. So let's have a look at those bends. The standard mentions that in part B have 3 or fewer bends. And then for each additional bend, the maximum drain pipe shall be reduced by 600 millimeters. So if it is, and let's just stop at that point. So if it's a case that you're using 22 mil copper pipe, and you've used 3 bends and you need another bend to obviously get out to a discharge point, you could add a 4th bend, but you'll have to reduce the pipe size by 600 mils. So then you're not working with 4 meters, but that you actually then only have 3.6 meters. So just to quickly recap, so I can use 1 bend, I can use 2 45 bends, I can use 3 or fewer bends. But if I do need a 4th bend as an example, what's important is that you do remember that I need to reduce that length by 600 millimeters. As the standard states, all bends shall be a maximum of 45 degrees. So to our listeners out there, please, it cannot have a 90-degree bend as you see in the pictures below. It has to all be of a 45-degree angle. So how should a discharge pipe be installed? Well, the standard provides some clear guidance. It says that it has to be installed downwards, and it's got to be continuous to the outlet. And there's obviously a reason for that, because you want to ensure that water flows down and there's no traps, so down and out, and it needs to be supported. The drainage of both the valve and pipe is ensured. So obviously you don't want to have water lying in this pipe because it's facing maybe upwards or slightly at an angle where there's, it's not insured. That drainage is not insured at all. And then the other one is, it should be blockage due to freezing and foreign objects is prevented. Sometimes, we come across things where, there's insects that have nested in a discharge pipe, and that can be dangerous. You might have installed it perfect, but you go back a couple of years down the line and suddenly there's a nest of, looks like mud that an insect has made, or a spider web. And obviously that can then obviously prevent the pipe from discharging, because it's a foreign object that's in that pipe. So right back on the top, I did mention that it needs to allow for air to go into this pipe and obviously to dry that pipe out. You don't want to have traps in the pipe. So a very important picture, and you'll see there's a picture of me at the bottom on the left-hand side there, and I think I'm going to take a few minutes on this slide because it's a very important slide. And for plumbers out there, it's important to note that when a TP valve opens and it discharges, that discharge happens probably under temperature around about 94 degrees plus minus. And when that discharge, obviously it's got to go somewhere. It goes through this discharge pipe, and when the flow occurs, it's obviously going to discharge to the atmosphere. But when you're installing that discharge pipe, it is key and it's important that it is installed in a position where it's at a minimum risk to injury or can cause damage due to steam or hot water falling on an occupant or a person or anyone. Obviously the standard clearly states when the flow occurs from them, the flow can obviously readily be observed, so there's a problem, but with a minimum risk of injury due to damage or steam. Well, if you look at that picture, I'm standing under one where that is clearly not good at all. And if that TP discharge pipe had to discharge and the TP opened at, let's say, that 94 degrees, think about it, it's like a cup of hot boiling water that's basically that kind of temperature that's going to be discharged. And in this case, with a bit of force and pressure, and would discharge, in this case, over my head. And I promise you, if that did happen, I'd probably end up in hospital with some serious injuries. If you look at the right-hand side, not the best of pictures, but scalding is a reality. It happens. People burn to various degrees, and obviously we don't want that to happen. And I think the standard provides some nice guidance to say, make sure that it's has minimum risk of injury. So the other thing is that these TP discharge pipes, they should never be joined. So think about things that we may sometimes come across is where TP and expansion relief and a TP pipe have been joined together, and now they become to save on cost to try and get out at a discharge point. Well, ladies and gents, it says they are never joined together, and that each is led to a discharge point which is visible to the outside of the building, in a position where the discharge from the pipe will also not cause a nuisance. So can you imagine a walkway, and there's a pipe that's discharging, and that discharge is falling? One could slip, one could fall, and also it could just degrade the things like foundations and things that could really cause a problem from a health and safety risk. So watch out for the cause a nuisance, and that they cannot be blocked. So don't put them in a position where, you know what, oh, well, I'm going to put something in this, I'm standing as a consumer, I'm going to just block it, it looks like it's dripping. Be careful, look out for those kind of things. They shouldn't be blocked at all. They serve a purpose, and they have to be open, and they need to get out that discharge to protect the cylinder of the hot water. And water traps, obviously, they're a big concern. And obviously, if there are water traps, just imagine that the air cannot return because there's this trap. Then if it's the way it's been installed, if there's a trap and there's water lying in it, well, free air can't return into the system. And obviously, you need to look out that there aren't these traps that are in the discharge pipe that can develop, because they're not good, and they don't keep the system dry and free of. All I can say, it's a free return of air that is important, that keeps that pipe dry, and then when it's really needed for that TP to open up and discharge, that it doesn't have to still go through a trap or a blocked a section where water has been trapped. Just imagine it's almost like it's blocking the pipe to a degree. All right. Point D speaks about, in the case of safety valves, always be of metal and be inclined downwards from the valve. So if you look at the picture there, that's a big no. So they've used a plastic pipe, and that's just discharging into the dip tray. So obviously, from the previous slide, you can see it's got a discharge to the outside, and plastic is not an acceptable method. That you cannot use it. It's just the bottom line. It's always going to be of metal and be inclining downwards from the valve. So it needs to be used for the conveyance of water. So we're speaking about the discharge pipe here. Be used for conveyance of water resulting from the normal expansion of heated water. And here's that nice word, shall discharge to the atmosphere in a position where the discharge is, as we mentioned before, readily discernible, so you're able to see it, but shall not inconvenience the building, the occupants, or cause damage to the building. So looking at the photo above there, obviously that is not discharging to the atmosphere in a position where it can be readily discernible. I mean, obviously in that case, you'd have to get into the roof, have a look, and that doesn't conform to E, as I've just read. And with that, I want to thank you. I hope you've enjoyed the session as much as I have. Thank you, and please stay tuned for our future Tech Talks. We look forward to having you.